Hi everybody. We this in this lecture we will be discussing chapter 2. So last week, as you can see, we talked about the basics of computer system and then how to start a new program in Java. Now, in case you missed the first lecture, there is a link. It says chapter 1 lecture. So feel free to watch the lecture video. So today we will be talking about elementary programming, basically the basics of Java, like the data types, how to create, how to declare, and a variable, how to assign a value to variable. And then we'll talk about how to name an identifier, like either a variable or a class name. What are the rules for naming them? Can we name them anything we want? So there are some rules, actually 4 rules that we need to remember. And then we'll talk also about the arithmetic operations, about assignments, and then the different operations that we have. So let's get started. So I will switch to JCreator. Okay. So the first thing we'll start with is when you create your program for the first time, you need to learn about the variables. So what is a variable? A variable, you learned it in math, that a variable is something that changes value. Well, this is the same definition in computer science, but there is something more to it. The variable is basically, when you declare a variable, the computer will assign, will devote, will allocate a memory space for your variable, and also will give you a certain amount of space based on the data type of that variable. So for example, you have different choices. You can choose an integer variable or double. Double stands for decimal variable, or Boolean, which is true or false, or character. So there are different types of a string. So we'll talk about this, the most frequently used. So let's start with the first one, which is integer. So let's say I'm creating a program and I need variables. I need to save information. So let's say, for example, I want to, let's say, calculate the area of triangle, for example. So I need to save information for the length. So I'm going to put length. See, it's of type integer. Now, if I want to add to use decimal number, then I have to use double. So that double basically stands for any number that contains decimal value, like point something, 0.5, 0.62, and so on. So, but if you want to make it only integer, then you just put int. And then this is called declaration. So when you declare a variable, basically you are, or the computer or Java will allocate a space, a memory space for it. And then for integer, there is a certain amount of space. It's 32 bits. That's how much space you get for using an integer variable. If you are using double, like a decimal, that's 64. That's like twice the size. So here, I just declared the variable, but I didn't assign a value to it. So this is called declaration, okay? So this is called declaration. Declaration. That means you are declaring, you are introducing the variable. And then when you add a value, like let's say you put length equals, let's say, 8. So this is called assignment. That means you are assigning a value to your variable. Most of the time we combine them like together. So stuff like declaring first, then assigning, you can just use both of them or combine the two operations. So I'm going to put declare and assign a value to it. The best analogy I can give for variable is like a box. And I think this is the best analogy. Why? Because it's going to help you later on understanding some complicated concepts. So a variable is like a box. You save something in there. So anytime you want to get that item, you go straight to the box. You open the box, and then you get your toy or whatever you have in there. Okay, so a variable is nothing but a space, but a storage place. It's like a box. Okay, so if you can remember this picture of box, it will help you a lot later on when things get a little bit advanced. All right, so that's integer, and then I can declare another variable, which is the length. I'm sorry for the triangle, or let me use a rectangle. So we have length, and then we have width. So let's say 6. So this is to win. Remember, every variable has to be declared, because if you don't declare it, then the computer or Java specifically does not recognize that variable. That means there is no space. And if there is no space for it in the memory, that means it does not exist in the computer. The computer is not even aware that that variable exists. So it has to be declared. Okay, so we have two variables. Then we need to calculate the perimeter. We need another variable for it. So perimeter. Okay, and then I can just do the formula directly or declare, then you do it. But once you declare the variable, any variable, only one time, and then you can use it over without using int. That's a common mistake people make, students make, is they declare it many times. Because when you declare this second time, it's like you are introducing a new variable, not the same anymore. So be careful that you only declare it the first time. And then you can use the name over without int. So here I'm going to put, let's say, length times 2, that's the perimeter, plus that's a normal operation. We use a asterisk or star for multiplication. And then we have width times 2. Okay, that's the perimeter. Now to print, we talked about this last week. So in JCreator, because as I say, it helps you with some autocorrect feature. So you just put out, hit the enter key. So basically you have to type this. But in JCreator, if you type out, so the computer basically will help you type in the whole thing. So system out print line. Now let me type the text first. The perimeter. So the text, this is called string. So basically the program will just copy it the way it is. The perimeter is. And then I'm going to close. And then I'm going to put plus to separate the text from the variable perimeter. Because remember, perimeter contains a value, whatever the calculation is. So make sure that you don't misspell it. And then I'm going to end with semicolon. So I just created a program now. You declare your variables, whatever variable you need. We need only 2. And then we need one for perimeter. And then we calculate the formula. And then we display. So that's basically the 3 steps of any program. You collect the data, either by assigning values, or you get input from the user, and then you do the calculation, and then you display the results. So this is the first step. You get the information. You do the calculation, processing, and then you display the information. Now we're going to do the same thing for the area. Area. So it's length times width. Okay? And then the same thing, system out, print line, the area is, and then you close. Now, if I put this, that's going to get you an error. That means it's like you are confusing the program. You are putting a variable with text side by side with no separation. So the program may think that the whole thing is a variable, or there is a confusion here. So plus in programming language, in general, serves 2 purposes. Either for addition, like what we did here, we added, these 2, or to separate or to concatenate, basically, to be specific. Concatenate when you put 2 things side by side. So plus It's like a comma in English when you try to separate two sentences or something. So we use plus sign for that. Okay. So now let me click build the program. Look, in JCreator, we have two steps. You build the program, that means you check if there is any error. So if it says process completed, there is no error. And then you run the program that basically is going to show the results. So as you can see right here, the perimeter is 28 and the area is 48. And that's pretty much the same. So 8 times 2 is 16, and then 12. So that's 28. And then the area you multiply 8 times 6. Okay, so that's an example of a program. So here we used integer. Now I can do the same thing. Let's say I decide to put double. I can change this one to double. That's fine. But the double accepts integer and decimal. That means I'm allowed to put, for example, 8.5, 6.4. I can do that. But with integer, I can't do it. If I try to do it with integer, if I change this to integer, so the program is going to say, oh, what are you doing here? You are choosing the wrong. So if I try to build it, look, it's going to say an error here. Look, incompatible type. That means int supposed to be for integers only. You put something that is not integer, so this incompatible. There is kind of a conflict here. Okay, so this is one of the mistakes that usually people make, to choosing the wrong value for the data type. So here, if we put point something, you have to put double here, double. Okay, integer is only for integer, no decimal whatsoever. So I can put here double, and then do the calculation. I have no problem. It's going to do the calculation for me. It says because here, okay, well, see what happened here? So because I declared perimeter as integer and the calculation is decimal, I have the same problem. Because when I do the calculation, I'm going to end up having decimal value. So I will assign it to perimeter. Then when you have incompatible type, that means you have a decimal, but you don't have enough space. Remember we said that integer is 32 bits and double is 64. So it's like you have a small box, that's integer, a bigger box, that's 64. How can you make a big box fit in a small box? It doesn't matter how much you try. It just does not fit. That's the same thing. Okay, so here make sure if you choose double for length and width, you have no choice but to choose double for perimeter and area as well, because you can have the same problem. So now it should be okay. See that? You run the program, then you have the answer based on, so because of its decimal, sometimes you may get an answer that is like has too many decimal values. Okay, so that's an example. So we just learned about integer and double. Okay, another type that we're going to be using is char. That stands for character. Like for example, I'm going to put letter. Now for char, or for a character, it accepts only one single character and it's surrounded by single quote like this. Okay, so this is an example of a character. It could be anything like a, it could be lowercase a, it could be space, as long as it is one thing. Whatever key you have in the keyboard, you can use it. I can put this 2, but here this is different than the number 2, because if you put 2 and you put int, so the program will treat it as numbers. So this means you can add, multiply, subtract. But if you put it like a character like this, so the program is not going to add them as numbers. It's going to add them as characters. That's like the alphabet, A, B, C, D. So you have to be careful what type you are using. So here I'm going to put 2, or I can put a question mark. It could be any character you can think of, or a digit, or special character, anything here. Okay? So when I print, it's going to print A. I put letter. So of course, that variable contains the letter A, so it's going to print A, whatever you have in there. There is also another type, it's called Boolean. Boolean accepts only 2 values, either true or false. For example, I may have a variable called pass, either true or false. Okay, that's the only two values. So if you choose Boolean, sometimes you just want to answer the question yes or no. Did you pass the test? Either yes or no. Okay, are you coming tomorrow? Yes or no. So sometimes we use a data type Boolean. And then we have, so integer, double. Of course, we have different types of integer depending on the size, but this is the most frequently used. There are other types, like for example, for integer, there are 3 or 4 types. All of them are integer. The only difference is how much space the program will allocate for you. So integer is 32 bits. There is something higher, which is long. It's an integer, but it accepts or takes more space. So it depends what you're going to use it for. Okay? That's why in one of the slides in PowerPoint, it explains how much space. That means, for example, integer, the maximum you can use is 2 billion. And then on the negative side, the same thing, negative 2 billion. So if you are using a number higher than 2 billion, like trillion, integer would not be enough. You have to use long, like this. So value, it's exactly the same as integer. It takes bigger values than integer. That's the only difference. So we're not going to use it that often. So integer will be the most frequently used. So we learned integer, double, Boolean, and character. And then we have one which is like different, but the way we declare it and assign it is similar. It's string. So string basically it accepts a text, like one or more characters. For example, I can put name, John Doe. That's an example of a text. It's called string. Remember that's why I mentioned here string. So anything between double quotes, it's called string. Anything, any combination of characters, digit, as long as it is between double quotes, it is string. Okay? So here, for example, I can print name. So it's going to print John Doe. All right, John Doe. So this is the most frequently used data type: integer, double, char, Boolean, and string. So that's the one we're going to be using throughout the semester. All right, now when it comes to variable, can we name it anything we want? So here we named it length, width. Can we name it? The answer is yes and no. You can name it anything you want, but there are 4 rules. I cannot name the variable starting by a number, like 6, for example. Here, I'm going to get an error. If I try to build it, it's going to say, no, you can't name it like that. See, there's an error here. It does not accept anything that starts with the number. So that's the first rule. You cannot start with number. You cannot have a space in between. Like, for example, I can put length 1. There's a space between them. So there's a problem here. The problem, because you are creating a confusion. Are we talking, especially when you put something like that, like a grade average? So here there is a confusion. Are you using one variable, 2 variables? Now, if you are using 2 variables, now you have to declare the second one too. So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. That's why Java makes it illegal, invalid to have a space between them. So either put them together like this, or you can use underscore. And that's the third rule. You can use only 2 special characters, underscore and the $sign. That's the only special characters you can. You can use them in the front, in the middle, or at the end. Okay? Most of the time they use underscore. Okay? So that's the rule number 3. So we said you cannot start with the number or digits. You cannot have a space in the middle or somewhere in the middle. You cannot use any special characters other than underscore and then the $sign. And the 4th rule, you cannot use any of the keyword of Java. Can you see them like in blue? So anything that is blue, it's a keyword. That means they have a special meaning. For example, I cannot call it class. I cannot call it public. I cannot call it static because they have a special meaning. I cannot call it void. I cannot call it int, double, char, system. All of this, I cannot. Why? They have a Boolean. So all of this cannot be chosen as a name. So remember the four rules. You cannot start with the number. There is no space, special characters only for underscore to $sign, and don't use the Java keyword or the reserved word for Java. So remember these four rules. Also, there is a variable that you can never change. Like sometimes we call it constants. So let's say, for example, I'm making a program, and then one of the variable is the tax rates, and then I don't expect that tax rate to change. So you start with final. Final means never change it, because this length, all this variable, you can change them, right? I can, for example, change it to 0 or add or multiply, whatever I can do. You can change the value, and that's the reason they call it variable, because it varies. But sometimes you don't want to change the value of certain variable. We call them constants. So they start with final, and by convention we make them capitalized so they look different than the rest. For example, I can put tax, can you see that, rates equals, for example, 0.08, for example, or 0.2, whatever. So once you do that, of course, you have to declare what type. So let's say this one has to be double, of course. So before you put the data type, you have to put final. So now if I try to change it, for example, let's say I'm going to put tax rate plus plus. Plus plus means add one. And then if I try to print it, let's see. So the program is going to say, oh, what are you doing here? We're not supposed to add one or subtract one to change it at all. So if you try, it's going to say you have a problem. Yeah. Okay, now this one is, let's say why it's pointing to this one. Perimeter, remember because I changed this one. Let me change it back to length because I was explaining. So I changed without paying attention. Okay, so look, cannot assign a value to final variable tax rates because you said final. That means don't change it. And sometimes for safety, for security reasons, and to avoid any disaster, because imagine the tax rate, let's say by mistake, instead of putting 0.08, you put 0.8, you forgot the zero. That's a big problem because that's the difference between 8% and 80%. So imagine you are an accountant and you are filing the taxes for big companies, and then by mistake you put 0.8. That's a lot of money. So that's going to cause a lot of problems. So to avoid that kind of issues, so you assign it, or Java will give you the possibility of assigning final. So even if you try, if even by mistake, the program will not allow it to happen. So that's something that is good. So here you can never change it. You cannot subtract. You cannot. The value will never change. Okay. So that's about final. So we don't use final a lot, but sometimes if you see final, that's what it means. That means can never, and you can recognize it easily because it is capital. Do you have to make it capital? Or no, it's by convention. When I say by convention, that means all the programmers agree. It's like a dress code. Sometimes it's not enforced, but it looks good if you follow the dress code because everybody will be doing the same thing. Okay, but if you decided not to, well, nothing is going to happen. The program is not going to stop executing just because you did not type it the right way, but you were violating, or you are not following the convention. As easy as that. All right, now let's talk what can we do with variables. Okay, so let's do some operations with variables because we're going to be doing a lot of operations. So let's say x, for example, is 5. So I can, or x, y, and then y is 6. Okay. Now, z, let's say it's not a value but an expression. Let's say x times 2 plus, or let me just make just all of them are numbers. So let's say we have 6 plus 5 times 3 minus 18 divided by 3, for example. So what do you think this will, we'll just remove the space. I mean, nothing will happen, it's just to be consistent. So what kind of, okay, this operation, what do you think I'm gonna get? What is the value of z? So here we have addition, we have multiplication, we have subtraction, and then we have division. The good news is just like math, because we have the order of operations, right? That correspond us. So the good news is in computer science, we follow the same rule. So we follow the order of operation, the order of operation. So what does the order of operation say? It says you need to start with parentheses first. We don't have parentheses. Exponents, multiplication, and division. That means I'm not going to add. Addition, subtraction is the last one. So that means I have to multiply 5 times 3, that's 15. Divide 18 by 3, that's 6. And then, only then, so that's going to give me this. It's going to be 6 plus 15, because you multiply first. I'm not going to subtract, but I'm going to put the minus, but I'm not going to apply it. And then 18 divided by 3 is 6. So finally, and then I'm going to put 6 plus 15. Well, of course, 6 minus 6 is 0, so we have 15 left. So if I print z, it's going to be 15. See that? So we always follow the operation. Now, what happened if I do this? So the parentheses come first. So that's, you're going to get a totally different answer. So when I run the program, it's going to add first. That's 11. Look, we got a totally different answer. That's 27. So we put 11 times 3, then you divide, then you do the subtraction. So you need to be careful that you need to follow exactly like what you learned in math, the order of operation. There's also a symbol that we use frequently. It's called the modulus. I'll give you an example. So let's say we have A equals 7, and then there is this percentage. So this percentage has a special meaning in computer science. That's the modulus. Modulus or mod. Basically, it's just a remainder or remainder. We don't say remainder, we use this term modulus or mod. So basically, when you divide 7 by 2, you get 3, right? So 3 times 2 is 6. So you have 1 left over. That's what we are talking about. So if you print, you're going to get 1. So A is 1, the leftover. Whatever is left over after performing the division, because the division is going to give you only the integer, right? So for example, if we have, let's say, get another example. Let's say we have 15 divide or mod or modulus, and then I put 6. So when I divide 15 by 6, that's 2, right? 2 times 6 is what? 12. So basically, what's the leftover? How far away 12 from 15? That's 3. So that's the answer. So the modulus, basically the leftover after performing the division. So it is very common, by the way. We use it a lot. In math, we don't use it that much, but see? But we, in computer science and programming, we use it a lot. So see here what the answer is. See, it's 3. Okay, let me give you one more example. What about 34 mod 10? Anybody? What is the remainder here? 34 mod 10. That means when you divide 34 by 10, you get 3. So what's the remainder? What's the modulus? Anybody?
4.
4. Very good. Why? Because you divide 34 by 10, you get 3. 3 times 10 is 30. So 30 and 34, so this 4, four difference. Okay, so that's what the remainder is. So let me give one more expression and then we can move on. So let's say we have a 9 mod or modulus. We say mod like a shortcut. And then we use, let's say, 4, and then we put plus, and then 12 divided by 4 minus 3 multiply 5. What do you think we're going to get here? So 9 mod 4 is what? When you divide 9 by 4, you get 2. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 and 9, so the difference is 1. That's the modulus. So here we have 1 for the first one. And then I'm not going to add, so I'm going to put plus. 12 divided by 4 is 3. And then I'm not going to subtract, but I put minus. 3 times 5 is 15. So always the addition, subtraction is the last thing to do. So now what do we have? 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 minus 15 is negative 11. So if I print B, we are going to get, sure enough, we got negative 11. So this is how we perform arithmetic operation. We follow the order of operation, but just keep in mind that this percentage sign, it means the remainder, the modulus, the leftover after performing the division. Now, there is something very interesting about the division. Now, let me give you an example here. So let's say we have C. What is the answer here? If I put 5 divided by 2, what is the answer? Can anybody tell me? So what is the value of C?
2.5.
You may think, but let's find out. You may think it's
3.
It says only 2. You know why? Because when you divide in computer science, and it's not only in Java, in C++ and other programming languages, when you divide an integer by integer, you get only the integer part of the answer. 0.5 is ignored, is chopped off. It's just like ignored totally. So when I run the program, you're going to get only 2. The same thing, like if you divide 7 by 2, you are going to go to get only 3 every time. It is because of the way the computer saves the information, store the information in a variable, so it gets only the integer part of it. The decimal is gone. 7 over 2, 1 over 2. So when you divide 1 over 2, you may think it's 0.5, but no, it's only 0. Okay, only 0. Now, somebody may say, well, how do I get that 0.5? Because what about if it's important? Because that's going to get me like a wrong answer. The answer is you have to change one of them, either the numerator or denominator to 0.0, something 0.0. For example, right here, let's say I have 5.2, but I want to make it 2.5. So you have to change it to 0.0. Now we have a problem. Now 5.0 over 2 will give me 2.5, but look, I have variable integer. That's not going to fit. We talked about this, right? You cannot save a decimal value in integer variable. Why? Because integer is a small box. Remember the small box, big box analogy? It will help because a decimal is 64 bits and then integer is 32. How can you fit 64 box, a big box, in a small box, which is half the size? So that's why you have to change integer to double. Then it will give you 2.5. Look, when I run the program, it's going to see 2.5. Sure enough, see, 2.5. So here you can see the answer, 2.5. Or I can change the bottom one. As long as we have at least one, I'm going to get the same answer, 2.0. 2.5, see, 5. Or both of them, but at least one. So that's going to give me 2.5. Or another option is if I have, let's say, both of them are integer, you can just place double in front of the number. It's called casting inside the parentheses. So basically what you are doing here, you are asking Java to change 5 to double. That means basically 5.0. It's like another option. So you can either put 5.0 or put double in front of the number. That means it's like you're asking permission. Would you please, change 5 to 5.0, make it double? So Java will say, okay, I can do that. So it will automatically be changed to 5.0. When you divide by 2, you get 2.5. Or you can do it in front of 2. It doesn't matter. As long as at least one of them is decimal value, is double. Okay? So that's how it works. So remember, integer over integer is always integer. The only way you can keep the decimal is you change one of them to decimal. So don't forget that. Another thing that also we're going to be learning, we use a lot of operations. So we're going to start. Let's say, for example, here, what do we have? Let's say x. Okay. We use, when we use the variable, we use a lot of what we call assignments, and then incrementation. Sometimes we increment the value. We make it increase or decrease. The most common one, for example, is plus plus. So plus plus means adding 1. So you have 5. When you add 1, it becomes 6, right? And there are 3 different ways to add 1 in Java and also in C++ and a few other languages. There are 3 different ways. The most common one is plus plus because it's easier. But also, I'm going to put them just right here. X plus equal 1. That's also adding 1. So this is, I'm going to put the comment here, add 1 to x. And this is the same thing, add 1 to x. So that was 5. I added 1, 6. I added another 1. That's 7. So when I run the program, you should see 7 in here. Okay? The third way to add 1 is you put the x equal x plus 1. So what does it mean? That means on the right side, this is the old value. You add 1, whatever the answer, you save it in x again. Remember the box analogy? So let's say you have a box. First, you have 1 toy, and then you add another toy, and then you put it back. Now you have 2 toys. That's exactly what it is. It's like you are updating the value of x by adding 1. So you added 1. So here, let's say you have 5. We added 1 is 6. Another one, 7. So 7 plus 1. So the one on the right side, that's the old value. 7 plus 1, 8. And then we're going to save it in variable x again. So now, from now on, it is 8, and so on. Anyway, so these 3 ways let me see if I make a mistake here. Okay, oh, I forgot something here. Oh, I forgot. Let's see, I put x plus 1. X plus.
So the semicolon isn't right. We put column instead.
Oh yeah. So it's easy to make mistakes in computer and programming. It doesn't matter how much you try. So thank you. So yeah, I was supposed to put semicolon. I put colon. So this is the 3 ways to add. So finally, so you're gonna get 5, 6, 7, 8. It's like you added 1 in 3 different ways. Of course, the most frequently, if you add 1, is plus plus. Now, what about if you want to add 2? I don't want to add 1. Then, so let's get y, for example. So y, I want to add 2. You put plus equal, and then you put the number that you are trying to add. Or you can use the other one, which is, but you can use the last 2. But you can use plus plus. Plus plus is specifically for adding 1. It's like a special case. Other than that, I can either put this y equals the old y, which is 6, plus 2, so it becomes 8, right? And then save 8 again in the box called y. So when you think of variable as a box, it's easy for you to make sense of this. So we just added 2 to the old value. Now the new value of y from now on is 8. So if I print y, so it's going to be 8. Okay, let's see if I made a mistake. I forgot to put something in there. I have to put y and then semicolon. So now we're going to have 8. See that? We have 8. And then I can add another 2, or let's say I'm going to add 5. So that's plus equal. Don't put equal plus. Plus first, equal 5. So now 6 plus 2 is 8. 8 plus 5 is 13. So if I print y again, so it's going to be 13. 8 plus 5, 13. So this is how you increment the variable. And whatever we said about plus is valid also for minus. Okay? So for example, let me get another variable. So if I use, for example, w equals 10, now I want to subtract. So if I want to subtract 1, you put minus minus. Okay, subtract 1 from w. So now we have 9. And then I'm going to subtract 3 more. Minus equal 3. So 9 minus 3 is 6. So when I print w is going to say 6 because I subtracted 1 and then select 3 more. Okay? So whatever we said about plus is valid. And also for multiplication also. Let's get another variable. So let's say we have p and then it's 2. I want to multiply, so you put p again. You always start with the operation first, then equal. Equal is the second one, okay? Because if you switch them, then you're going to get a totally different answer. So you put multiply equal 2. So this means p was 2. If I multiply by 2, it becomes 4. So multiply p by 2 and save it in p variable. That's what it means. So now, if I print p, it's going to be 4. Now let me change the number because, 2 times 2 is 4, but 2 plus 2 is 4. So to avoid that confusion, let's say multiply by 3. So this one will get you 6. Remember, 6. Now I have 6. Now I'm going to use p equals p times 4. What do you think I'm going to get? So we have 6. The old value of p, 6 times 4, 24. Now the new value of p is 24. If I print p, it should be 24. See that? 24. The same thing also for divide. So let me get another variable. Let's say s. So if I have, let's say, 64. So I'm going to put s equals. So I can either use the first approach or the second one. S divided by 2. So 64 divided by 2 is 32. Save it in S. So that's 32. S is 32. And then from 32, let's say I want to divide by 4. So 32 divided by 4 is 8. So finally, you're going to get 8 as the final value of S. Any questions about this? So this is, you're going to be using it frequently. This incrementation, decrementation, you're going to be using it a lot, okay? Especially the plus and minus. Multiply sometimes, yes, but plus and minus, we're going to be using it very frequently, okay? Now, there's one thing that I would like to mention here about before we move on to another topic, which is plus plus, sometimes we, let me have a variable here that to explain this. And then we don't, you may not have these questions, but it's good to know. So let's say we have a variable, let me come up with another, let's say f, okay? Or let's say d. So let's say d is 7. Please pay attention here. It's not complicated, but it's just a special case. What's the difference between plus, like d plus plus, and sometimes we use plus plus d? Now, the difference is if you have it by itself, it does not make any difference. It's the same thing. You are adding one. If it is by itself. Now, the difference happens when you are combining this with something else. For example, if I try to print d++, so there are two things happening here, and the program has to make a choice. Which one is the first? Which one is the second? We are adding one and we are printing two things, two separate tasks. The program cannot do two at the same time. It's impossible. The program always follow steps. You know, number one, statements or instruction number one, number two, three, and so on. So the program has to make a decision. Okay, are we adding one or printing? So that's the difference between D++. Now, when you put plus plus at the end, it's called post increments. Post increments. So basically the program will print first, then add one, which means you're going to print what? The old value, which is 7, then you add 1. That means next time you're going to be using D, it's going to be, like for example here, if I want to put system out print line D, the next time I'm going to use D, it's going to be 8. So run the program and see the difference. Did you see that? It's 7, then 8. That means the program will print, and then right after that, it will add 1. So the next time you use D, it will be 8. Now, if I change this one to plus plus first, now the program will add 1 first before printing. So then here you're going to see 8 in both of them. Why? Because we added 1 first. Then, so as you can see, you're going to see 8, 8 twice. Why? Because this is called a pre-increment. So this one is pre-increment. That means I add 1 first, then print. So this is just in case you see this. Now, if you have it by itself, with it not combined with anything else, then it means the same thing. It doesn't really matter which one you use. But the problem or the difference happens when you combine it with another statement. Now, since we talked about how to convert from one, like double, and there are some special cases that you need to be aware of. You know that there is, we said that you cannot assign a decimal value, right? If you have G, for example, here, I cannot put 4.5. Why? Because the decimal value is 64 bits. You cannot save it. A big box cannot fit in a small box. But there are some exceptions. If you put int like this is called casting. If you put this is the program. Okay, if you don't have this, of course, the program will not accept this. It's going to say, oh, there is incompatible type. Okay, now there is a special case here. If you put int in front of the number, it's like you are asking permission from Java to say that you are interested only in the integer part of the number. So when I print G, you're going to print only 4. It's going to be because you are getting only the integer part of it. That's what it means. So if I run the program, it's not going to cause an error, but it will print only 4. Can you see? Only 4 is printed. Why? Because you are doing casting. It's called casting. Let me write it down. Casting. So you are casting to an integer. That means you are basically converting from decimal to integer. Basically, you are getting only the integer part. You are ignoring 0.5. It's like you are saying, I know it's not legal, to assign a decimal value to an integer, but I know what I'm doing. I'm interested only in the integer. Sometimes you are interested only in the integer. It's like, oh, that's not important. Like, let's say, for example, I want to know, let's say, the average, for example, how many students, the average number of students who pass in my class, for example. So let's say I got all my students, all the grades and all that stuff, and then I found the answer to be 5.2. So there is no such thing as 5 students, 0.2. That means you're going to get only the 5 because you are interested only in that number, 5. That means 5 students passed out of 10 or out of 20, whatever. So sometimes you may need only the integer part of it because the decimal is not that important. So this is only in special cases. So this is like how you convert sometimes from one to the other. So let's see. So I think we covered pretty much the. There's only one. Sometimes, what about if you have a power like arithmetic? We talked about arithmetic operation, like how to add. What about if we have a power? How do we do it? So for the, let's say, for example, I have uh, a radius, for example. Let's say I have a radius. Radius, let's say, is 5. And I want to calculate, let's say, the area of a circle. We know that the area of the circle is, the area of the circle is what? Is pi r squared. That means you have to raise, basically you have to multiply radius by itself or square it. So let's say I want to calculate the area. So I'm going to put here area triangle should be equal 1. I have two choices. Either I'm going to put radius twice multiplied by itself, okay? Because pi r squared, pi we put like this, like 3, you can put 3.14, for example. So that's one way. If you want to use really the power, there is a way to do that. You put math, that's POW, which stands for power. Can you see like here? So the program is showing us that you need two numbers, the base and the power, the exponents. So I'm going to put here, the base in this my case is radius, and then you put comma 2. Comma 2 means square. That means this is the exponent part of it. So this is how we use power. Okay, math.pow. So for example, if I want to put 2 to the third, like 2 cubed. So you're going to put math, that's pow, and then you open the parentheses, you put 2 comma 3. That's 2 cubed. So the first number is the base, and the second number after comma is the exponents or the power. So this is in case, like sometimes you want to use, I mean, if it's only square, that's not a big deal. You can just multiply by itself. But sometimes, you know, it's more convenient if you can use math.pow. It's easier. It takes less space. It takes less coding, and then it's more accurate. More accurate. All right. Any questions about what we talked about? So let me just summarize very quick. So we learned about the different types of variable, of data type. I'm sorry. We talked about integer. We talked about double. Integer is only, does not accept decimal. We talked about double, decimal. We talked about the char, that's one single character. And then we talked about string, which is like a set of characters surrounded by double quotes. We talked about some arithmetic operation. We said that we follow the order of operation in programming. So parentheses come first, then exponents, then multiplication, division, and modulus, all at the same level. And then finally, addition and subtraction. We also learned about how to convert from one data type to the other, especially like from integer to double, and what kind of error you have. If you have a variable of type integer, it accepts only the integer value. If you have a decimal, that's going to cause an error. So you're going to get an error because a decimal does not fit in an integer variable. The only exception is if you cast it to integer. That means you selected only the integer parts of it. And then we said that also that to divide an integer by integer, 5/2, you get only the integer part of the number, which is 2. And to be able to keep the decimal you have, like this is the example we use, so you have to either change the numerator or denominator to decimal, like 0.0, 5.0 over 2, or 5 over 2.0, or you can cast it to double. That means changing 5 to double. So the program will change automatically 5 to 5.0. So when you divide by 2, you keep the decimal. We also talked about the incrementation, decrementation. We said to add values to your variable, there are different ways. For adding 1, you have plus plus or plus equal 1, or you can put x equals x plus 1. So this all 3 different ways you can add 1. For the other numbers, if you want to add another number other than 1, then you have the last 2. You can put x plus equal 5, x plus equal 6, and so on. Or you can put x equal x plus 1. That means the old value plus 2, plus 3, whatever, and then save it again in your variable. And the same thing for subtraction, for multiplication, and then for division. Finally, we said that for power, we use math, that's pow, and then you put the base and the exponents in there. All right. So any question about this? Anything that does not make sense in here? Any comments? Any thoughts? No questions? All right, if you have no questions, let me go to see what kind of quiz or assignment you have to see if you have any questions about that. So let me go to this, and then I'm going to share my screen, of course. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So this is chapter number 2. What is program assignment number 2? Okay. So as you can see, there are 2 or 3 problems. The first problem, or first program, write a program that displays the area and perimeter of a rectangle. We just did that, right? With a width of 4.5 and the height of 7.9 using this formula. So you have to declare every single variable you are using. So you're going to use length and width. They give you the values, 4.5 for the width, and the height is 7.9. Make sure you use the correct data type. This has a decimal. You know what to use. For the perimeter, since the width and height are decimal, are double, you have no choice but to choose double for perimeter. And the same thing for area. Make sure you declare any variable before using. So this is very similar to the one we had. For program number 2, create a program that assigns values. So of course you have to declare variable. First name. So what kind of variable is this? Is this integer? No. Is it double? No. Is it char character? No. It's a string. So you're going to put string. Okay. Give it a name and then put right here. So let's say, for example, how do I do the first line? So let me switch here. Share. Oh, sorry, I clicked on the wrong one. Okay, so share the jQuery. All right, so so you need to use a variable of type string. So I'm going to put, for example, here, just for the first line to show you how it works. So I'm going to string, okay? I'm going to call it name or first name. First, remember, no space, name. And then I'm going to put, let's say, John Doe. Okay, so that's the variable. Now, when I print it, I'm going to use this. Of course, you have to declare all your variables first, but to print it, you're going to put system out print line. So you're going to put first name because the program will print this one first. It's going to show exactly the way you see it. And then next to it, you may want to put, does it say, yeah, the plus to separate it. And then you're going to put first name. That's it. So the first line will be like this. So if I run the program, you're going to see it exactly the way it looks on the question. See, first name, and then you have colon, and this is whatever the name is. And then you're going to do the same thing for the rest. For last name, for age. So you're going to put int. Okay. It's better, of course, to have all the variables together. So you're going to put int age. Age, let's say 24. And then you're going to do the same thing here. System out print line, age, because this is the text that will be shown first. And then the value of the variable, you put plus, and then once you put age, of course, the program will find the value and display the value only. So when you run the program, you're going to see the first two, and then you're going to do the same thing for all of them. See that? So it's the same thing for the rest. So it shouldn't be a problem. Okay, let me go back to, yeah, text. And then you're going to do the same thing, okay? Remember that gender, you're going to put only one character because it accepts only one. So make sure you use char, okay? Hourly wage, that's a decimal, right? So you're going to use, but this $, you're going to add it separately. It's not part of the number. So you have to put plus. And then you put, so for example, if you put the $, let me show you here. It should be separate. So let me what is G? Oh, sorry. So for the $, so for example, let's say I want to put hourly wage. Remember, no space. I'm going to put, let's say, 24.65. So when you print it, system out print line, you're going to put hourly. So when you are typing the text in string, it doesn't really matter. You can leave a space because that's not a variable. It's the hourly wage. But look right here, I'm going to make sure the $sign is here. It's not part of the variable. Then you put plus and then the variable. Did you see that? So the $sign is part of the text. And then plus only the variable by itself. You don't want to put the $sign here. That would be a problem because it will be part of the variable name. That's not what you want. All right, so that's pretty much about program number 2. Let me go back to question. So question number 3. So this is about the scanner. Oh, that's a good question we did not talk about. So we're going to spend probably 5 minutes talking about scanner. How does the scanner basically when you get input from the user? So I'm going to have an example to show you how we use the scanner. So I'm going to go back to JCreator, and then I'm going to use the scanner. Okay, let me delete all of this. So before you use the scanner, just like in the physical scanner, so we use scanner to get input and then get that information inside the computer, like whether it's a text or a picture. So this is the same thing. So before you have to import, you have to add this statement on top of your program. Import Java, lowercase, .util .scanner as capitalized, semicolon. And then you're going to create a scanner object. That means you have to give it a name. It's like when you have a printer or scanner, every scanner or printer has a name, because what about if you have 3 or 4 scanners in the building? You don't even know which one is which. So they have to have a name. So I'm going to give it a name, scan. I'm going to call it scan, but you can feel free to call it anything you want. So new scanner. Always you type it exactly the way you see it now. System in. Remember, system out, we get the information out. System in, we get the information in. So now we have our scanner. We imported the scanner, and then we named our scanner scan. Now let's start. So let's say I want to ask a question, because the user will not answer unless you see the question. It's called the prompt. So let's say I'm going to say, enter the first number. Okay, so when I run the program, as you can see right here, you're going to see these statements. So enter the first number. So when you see this question, you're going to answer, right? You're going to say, okay, I'm going to type my first number. Okay, now once you type the number, it has to be saved for the computer to do the processing, to do the calculation. So since a number is a type integer, it makes sense to choose integer. Num1. I'm going to give it a name. And then you're going to scan it using the scanner. Scan.nextInt. So you are scanning, just like when you go to the grocery store or something, and they scan whatever you buy. So when you scan, they get the information from the item. So this is the same thing we are typing. So the program will scan it and save it in here. And then I'm going to repeat the same thing for my second number. Enter the second number. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. Num2 equals scan dot next int. Again, I'm going to type my second number, it will be scanned. Now I have two numbers, they're already saved. Now I'm going to add them. So I'm going to have another variable, sum equals num1 plus num2. And then I will print system out print line, the sum of two numbers, or these two numbers is, and then I'm going to put sum. Now, if I run the program, let me build it first, make sure that there is no error. See, process completed, and run the program. So now, look, step by step, the program will ask me the first number and then wait for my input. Enter the first number. The program is not going to move until I answer the question. So I'm going to put, let's say, 20. So before I hit the enter key, well, okay, once I hit the enter key, the program will scan it very quick, 20, and save it in my variable num1. That's exactly what's going to happen. So I'm going to hit the enter key, the scanning took place. So now num1 has value of 20. And then the same thing, enter number 2, 10. Again, once I hit the enter key, the program will scan it and save it in variable num2. And then automatically it's going to create a variable and add them up and then show me the result. Look, hit the enter key. See that? The sum, let's see it again. The sum of these two numbers is 30. See that? So that's how the scanner works. So let me add, let's say, the first one, a question about the name. So I'm going to put here, enter your name. Enter your name. So I'm going to put, so the name, is it integer? So I put like integer here. Oh, name is not a number. It's not a decimal. Oh, that's a string. So you put string. I'm going to put string name. And then I'm going to put scan next line. Next line. So next line matches with string. Next int matches with int. If I have double, it will be next double. So now I put the name. So here I can add the name. I can put, for example, here, name. Let me add the statements at the end. Thank you. Thank you. And then I'm going to put the name. See that? So let me run the program and see. Enter your name. I'm going to put Prof E. I'm going to hit the enter key. Enter the first number, 20. Enter the second number, 10. Once I hit the enter key, it's going to say the sum of these two numbers is sum. Thank you, and then whatever the name is. See? Oh, it disappears very quick. See, the sum of these two numbers is 30. Thank you, Prof. E. See, that means that shows you that name was saved. That means the name was saved in the variable. Otherwise, we're not going to see it here. Okay, so this is basically how the scanner works. Now, let me ask you a question. There is a little problem that may happen. What happened if I ask the name right after the two numbers? Let me try and see. This is a little problem about the order. If I move this and then after here, like let's say here, let's see what kind of problem we're gonna have when I run the program. Look, I asked the numbers, first, second. Okay, let's run the program and then I want you to follow along. So it's gonna say, enter the first number. Okay, 20. Hit the enter key. Enter the second number. Okay, 10. What happened when I hit the enter key? What do you think happened? It's supposed to ask me about the name, right? But look what happened. It says, enter your name, but it answered the question. The sum of these two numbers is 30. Thank you. And then it didn't mention the name because it was not saved. So this happens when you start with an integer followed by string. When you start with a string followed by integer, you don't have this problem. So let's see how we can do that. How can we solve this? How can we solve this? So there are, let me try this one and see if it's going to work. So if this is, let me see if this one works. 20, 10. No, it did not work. So what we can do is, if we have this problem, what we can do, okay, I'm sorry. We're going to use another way. We're not going to use, if we have this problem, we're not going to go and then put scan that next line. So we're going to do this integer like this, integer that pass int scan that next line. So basically what we are doing here, we are going to use next line and then convert it to an integer, because if you do it this way, you will not have that problem. So this happens only if you have integer followed by string. If all of them are numbers, then there is no problem. Integer or double, you're not going to have that problem. This happens only when you ask about something that is related to numbers and then you follow it with something about string. So this one you're not going to have if you change it to this. So I'm going to use the same thing for here. So if I run the program, you're not going to see the problem. If I run the program, so it's going to say enter the first number 20, the second number 10. Say enter your name. Prof. E. Say now it says the sum of these two numbers is 30. Thank you, Prof. E. So this is in case it happens. If it does not happen, you don't have this problem, then just use scan that next int. Okay, this is just in case. All right, so now let's go back to now we can solve the problem, right? So now let's go to the assignment and see if we can solve the problem. So what is the problem about? They said, okay, write a program that reads the subtotal and the gratuity rate, then compute the gratuity and the total. And they give you an example. For example, if the user entered 10 for subtotal, 15% change it to 0.15, okay? For gratuity rates, and the program displays 1.5 is your gratuity, and then 11.5 is how much it's gonna cost you. So when you run the program, you should get this. So you're gonna use this scanner, right? And then you're gonna ask, enter the subtotal, that's a number, integer. So you're not gonna have a problem with, because you don't have string in here, so you're not going to have to deal with the issue that I had. So you're just going to use scan.next int, so you're not going to have a problem. So the first question, the first prompt, enter your subtotal, save it in integer, call it subtotal, int subtotal. But if you want to do it as a double, that's fine. You can put double, that's fine. But remember, when you put double, you put next double. Okay, you don't put the variable is double and you put next int. They don't match. And then you ask the second question, just like the way we ask the second number. Enter the gratuity rate 15. Okay? And now the gratuity rate, what you're going to do is what? How are you going to get it? So you're going to multiply and divide by 100, right? So 10 times 15, that's 150. If you divide by 100, but you have to be careful, integer over integer, integer. So the best way is to declare your variable as double. So something like that. Let me show you here. Share. Oh, share with the. So what you're gonna do in your case, so you're gonna put here, for example, enter do subtotal. Subtotal, yes. So in my case, in your case, you're gonna put double here. So you don't have to deal with the issue of integer over integer. You're not going to have a problem. So subtotal, and then you're going to put scan.next double. Scan.next double. And then you're going to put the same thing or enter the gratuity rate. The gratuity rate. Again, you're going to put this double. Gratuity rate. Rate, for example. You can name it anything you want. And then you're going to use the same thing, scan that next double. And then you finish the rest, okay? You do the calculation, and then you display the answer just like what you have in the program. So when you run the program, you should have something like this. The gratuity, you can put them in separately, or you can put them both in one line as in the example. So the gratuity rate, you're going to multiply subtotal by the gratuity and divide by 100. Okay. And then for the total, so you are going to add the subtotal and the gratuity, because you know when you add 15, the subtotal, I'm sorry, 10 plus 1.5, that's going to give you the total 11.5. So you're going to add subtotal and gratuity should give you the answer. Any question? Everybody got what the question is about? Any questions about this program number 3? Can you do it on your own with no problem?
So actually I have a question.
Yes.
On the part of the gratuity is $1.5 and the total is $11.5. I was wondering if like I put the variable that contains the gratuity rate, then I put the string, and then after the string I put again another variable and declare another variable for the subtotal. Will it work?
I think it does work. Just make sure the $sign should be part of the string, like what we did before. Remember earlier, I put the $sign just before the closing quotation. Just before it, that's where you put and then you put plus sign. So you're going to put something like this. Let me show you an example here. So you're talking about the last line, right?
Yes.
The last line, yeah. So the last line, you're going to put, for example, system out print line. You're going to put the gratuity is, and then you put the $sign. See that? Then you close, and then you put plus, and then you already have a variable, right? Because you did the calculation. So you're going to put gratuity here. Now, if you want to separate them, you can. You can just put the gratuity here, and then you can put the total. It's, the total is in a separate line. But if you want to put them together, you can. But I don't mind if you put them like this. The total is, and then again, you put the $sign, you close the quotation plus, and then you put the total. because the first one is subtotal, okay? So of course you have to calculate the total first by adding the subtotal to the gratuity. So this is the last two lines. This is at the end. You still have to do some calculation in between, right? Because the gratuity, you have to multiply subtotal by the gratuity rate and divide by 100. And then the total, so you have to do the calculation here. The gratuity, for example, you declare it, and then you put gratuity is the subtotal multiply by the gratuity rate, or whatever we called it this, and then you divide by 100. Remember, here the subtotal and gratuity is double, so you don't have to worry about integer over integer. And then you calculate the other one. Total is the subtotal plus gratuity. So you have to do the calculation before you display the answers. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? So this is basically what the program is about. You just ask the subtotal, ask about the gratuity rate, you do the calculation in 2 lines, and then you display the answer in 2 lines. That's basically what the question is asking. Any questions before we end the meeting? I will post the this lecture in Canvas in case like you want to take your time watching it again and going over the the concept that we covered. Okay, so thank you so much for taking the time to attend. Thank you. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know. Send me an email, let me know. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you.